Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are talking about language and completeness and consistency issues for Wolfram Language, and we've got, it seems, a variety of different topics for today. Okay, documentation of Verilog's version of with. Now, we cannot document this until the coloring stuff has been done. We've said that in previous versions, and we need to hold to that. So, I don't know how, I don't consider it totally urgent, but we really can't document it until the coloring is working. Does that make sense to people?
Well, I was hoping to try to look at it before the meeting to see really, when the pedal hits the metal, how much work it would be. But I got sucked into some other more urgent stuff. So.
Okay, well, so let's find that out and let's loop back to that question then. Okay. There's nothing more to say.
Just remind me. So, are you saying that as long as it's not showing red, even if it's not contextualizing all the way down, that might be reason to go forward?
Possibly.
Okay. So I think we're all pretty much in agreement that we can make the red go away for 12.1 without competing with any other front-end features. Making it, fully nest and all that stuff, then you're potentially having to choose between this and some other front-end features.
Well, the code assistance features are the most important things we're delivering from the front end, as far as I'm concerned, apart from high DPI support. So we cannot compete with those. So if we can prevent it going red, I suppose we can put it in. We can document it. Okay?
Okay.
But I'm not thrilled about it. But why doesn't John find out how hard it actually is?
Well, I already know it's not easy. The only question is it hard or very hard?
Okay. Fine. Well,
it's just because it's a new paradigm to be introduced to the syntax coloring code, which is not an easy body of code to work with. That's the problem.
I understand. Since we're here, what if we had contextual machine learning based, well, it won't be coloring, it'll be auto suggests. Is that really hard to deal with or not? If somebody gave you a neural net that you run to decide some rankings for autocompletes based on context, could you deal with that?
The first question I would ask is how I access that neural net.
It's C code. Assume it's a lump of C code.
If it's something that I can link into the front end, then yeah, we can do something like that.
Okay, so because the machine learning people
have features coming which make that a possibility in terms of easily linking into the front end.
Okay. Right, I understand. But it's not going to be a very complicated piece of C code. It's just going to be a lump of code. And you feed it a string of characters and it'll tell you something, right? So the machine learning people believe that, the front-end team believes that they can't use any machine learning stuff. So somebody has to break out of that misimpression.
Well, they can't use it in the form that it's available in the kernel.
That's
right?
correct. It will be an exported lump of C code. Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right, but I'm just saying, I'm wondering if that is the source of their misunderstanding.
I agree that that's a possible misunderstanding. I already addressed that with them. They still thought there was a problem.
Well, it's certainly an understanding or a misunderstanding that I had as well. So,
right.
But I can talk to them and let them know about stuff on our roadmap, which makes this a lot more straightforward.
Okay.
Do you want to review the futurized documentation before
Sure.
we go?
Gosh, I'll be so much happier when we've properly modularized this whole palettes thing.
So it's the futurized usage and the futurized note, and then I will need to add an example after it's defuturized.
Can I do the obsessive thing? Oh wow, something's broken about that def2 thing there.
All right, I'll take a look.
But otherwise, I have no problem with this. It looks well written.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about graphics row. So do I need to run this? Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So probably we should start off with Brett. Where's Brett? Is he not in this meeting for some reason?
We need Brett. Yeah.
I'll find out.
Yeah, because this is not a fruitful discussion. If he's normally here, which is why I'm surprised.
Okay. What is it taking its time? Is it running graph data?
Yes. Right.
Oh, I see. It's running across a whole bunch of different graphs here, so it's got to load that in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that there will be nice new. I mean, I don't mind those progress things were okay to me. It's just that we need to standardize progress stuff. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next item and wait for Brett to show up. It's described as an inverse of integer string.
Right. So if you look at the ref page for from digits, it says it's the inverse of integer string, and I think integer digits. Is that the right function? So like the first note.
I see.
From digits.
Wow, I didn't even know we had a thing that constructed something from Roman numerals. Okay.
Right. Now the problem is so in the beginning there was just different numerical bases. Then,
I know. So we added Georgian and Ethiopian and things like this.
Right, and base 64 and base 58, and all these.
Right. So the question is, do we want to support the from digits for Ethiopian, for example? And the answer is it'd be lovely to do that, and we must have code for doing that because we do.
Well, see, that's what we don't have.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think anybody disagrees that in principle we should. Now, my understanding from Francisco is we have code for some of these, but not all of them. So Francisco should speak into what exactly we have, and
Let's make another small comment. The discovery of what this list is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What we should be doing. This is an idea. Okay. When we have a list like this in documentation, we should put this in the data repository. Okay, that list basically, or the list of all of these variants. And we should, in these notes, just say, this list is available in the data repository in this place. See what I'm saying? And we should call it something like integer string variants or something, or integer. And that way, if you need to, like I was about to just try something and try it in all these possible bases, in all these possible number systems, right? But I don't have a good way to do that. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been annoyed by this many times, that we've got a list like this, and the only thing I can do is scrape this page. Get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You understand? So what I'm saying is, did you understand what I said?
Yes.
Okay. Do we think it's a good idea?
Only if it's automatically scraped.
What do you mean by that?
Like, say during the documentation build process, somehow it auto-generates the data repository stuff from the table in the doc sources.
It would be nice if it did that, yeah. But I mean, unfortunately,
otherwise it's
tables.
We sort of have multiple places that you have to maintain.
Well, I understand that, but the same thing is true, for example, with syntax coloring right now, and with option completion. So we do have a scraping process for those things. We would have to make sure that this gets done, in a way that's right, in a consistent way. But that's not an excuse to not provide it for our users. It's a reason why we need to build a system that does that properly, right?
Maybe already in Wolfram Language data.
Is it?
I don't know, but it could be another place to put it.
I don't think it's the best place, though. I think the nice place to put it is just something, because what I've just realized, which I hadn't really realized before, is that this is the place you're going to look for it. It's right here in the documentation, right? It's not like you're going to look for this some other place. You're going to look for it in the documentation. You're going to say, how do I
Right.
get
So then,
that?
why would you look for it in the data?
That's my whole point. That's why I was saying, did you understand what I said? Because what I'm saying is, the whole point is, you put a note right after this that says, this table is available in the data repository.
Right. Well, you could, that note could just as easily read as available from Wolfram Language data, entity, comma, property.
It could. Yes, it could. I agree. It could.
And that seems to me like a more sensible place. I mean, I use Wolfram Language data to look up, options.
Well,
and
it's not
functions.
unreasonable. It's not an unreasonable point. Let's see what the design would look like there. Okay.
I wonder also if we could put that in Wolfram Language data, if we could, if this list evolves with different versions, that we could get for each version, which is the list of available arguments.
Well, we don't have that for other stuff here. So what would we call it? I mean, we would call it something like, we would have to have it be an association, because these things could have
right, multiple arguments that have strings.
So it could be called something like argument values or something, and then it could be
I would call it string arguments.
Okay.
And it's weird, right? Because,
I mean, there is something...
consider string replace, string arguments obviously should just be not applicable or something like that.
No, that's wrong. Right.
And then similarly for other functions, you might have more than one argument that is
fine. Named string arguments. Then it's
how about argument choices?
No. My point was you have to specify, is it the second argument that you're talking about, or the third argument, or the first argument?
That's right. That's why I was saying, if you were listening,
yep.
That's why I was saying it should be an association, right?
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So then we would have a note that says it's specified in Wolfram Language data of, in that case, integer string argument choices.
I really don't like argument choices, because that sounds way too general, and we'll.
Okay. Well, what would you like? Named string?
Named string arguments, I think.
No, because that suggests it's the arguments are. That suggests it's the arguments that are named, and that's not what's happening. It's the values in the arguments that are named.
But there are
unfortunately
arguments that are named strings.
I know that. But that's not. But the people won't read it that way. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm still coming back to it should be in the function repository, because I think this is kind of a hack to put it in here. Argue for me again why it should be in Wolfram Language data rather than in the data repository.
Because that's where we put in the options and.
What options though? It's not, the option values are not there. Only the option names, not the option values. We don't have any information on option values here.
We think we have the defaults.
No, we don't.
Oh, I think options is. I mean, take a look at what it is.
In a sense, the autocomplete system must know already.
You need to give it.
There's a common option values.
Wait. What happened here?
Well, you didn't give it an entity.
Yeah, the entity is a string. It's the string integer string.
Shouldn't we allow the symbol name as well?
Maybe not. Well, right. It's entity Wolfram Language data, right?
Okay, so that's just the options as you would get from options of the.
Right, but that's also what's listed in the documentation. Right, in the table, in the documentation, right, you see those options and their values.
What do you get? There's also a common option values property of Wolfram Language data.
Okay, let's take a look at that.
I didn't realize that was available.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
So common arguments will be common argument values.
No, because it's not necessarily common. It's
Well,
So-
you have cases
Those
where it's
correspond to what the completions for those options are.
this does or does not.
Right, so we
Does.
could, how about named argument values or argument values? But I think named just to make it clear that we're giving the string ones and not arbitrary arguments.
What about true and false?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, is this really just restricted to strings, or is it any, of the special forms that may get, specially identified in a table?
I see.
Yeah. I think it would be more flexible to put these in the data repository because I think there's so many different cases here of different kinds of things that can happen. I mean, if I look at Sound Note, my favorite example of one that just drives me crazy that you can't get, that list. Okay. Now, do we put it in one list here? If we had it in the data repository, do we list separately? We got to list. See, it's not so simple because we need to say styles, percussion events. Those probably should be separate, right? Where you want a list of percussion events, you want a list of styles. Those are all values for that string, but they are differently configured values. And it will be really good to have them be separate.
Right. On the other hand, if we put it in the data repository and not in Wolfram Language data, if I want to find out what are all, well, maybe if it's an association, this wouldn't really work anyway. But I was going to say, because I use this all the time, if I want to find out what functions understand, Ethiopian as an argument.
Okay, that's a different thing. You're not going to be able to find it out this way. That's a complicated thing. I agree. That's interesting, but that's a kind of thing that you want to find out.
Right, but because I can certainly use Wolfram Language data to find out, which functions take a given option.
I really think what it should do is this should have a link, possible, and this should have some pretty stylized link saying typical possible styles, paren, listed in Wolfram Data Repository. Something like that, and that's a link. And you just go to that link and you're on the page. See what I'm saying?
What if we just made it easy to copy the table out as a data set or something?
You mean a click to copy?
Yeah, something along those lines.
How would anybody discover that? I agree, that's nice. That's a nice idea to have this be click to copy.
Because you can copy that right now and hit it with normal and.
Well, this happens to be something somewhat reasonable. I had no idea that would work.
Right, because this is just a normal grid and not a fancy table. But
even in the integer string case, with a little bit of care, you can select a column.
Well, let's try it. I mean, but this is a hack. If this was a click to copy, yeah, who knows what this thing is? Okay, fine. I managed to get. Did I get it? In fact, here.
Yeah, I mean, you got an n by one, a 1 by n array. Right, you'd need to flatten it before you.
I'm well aware.
And not all numeric systems go that far, that number.
Now, wrong percent.
Okay. Now, why is that invalid system Ethiopia? Oh, great.
That's probably a typo in the documentation, right?
Yeah, every variant I've tried hasn't worked, though. I think it's just a bug.
Well, let's go look at the source. Francisco, go look at the source. Find out what
Sure.
it should be.
But I also agree that most if not all of the others seem to be the AN form, not the country name form.
Yes, right. Okay, anyway, let's decide what we're going to do with this. To me, I mean, I didn't even think of, I tried this before and it had completely not worked, this copy it out thing. I mean, that was a while ago, I admit. So, I mean, I really favor having something where it's sort of an easy, okay, Ethiopic. All right, well, let's just go change this. Why? Can we make sure that whether it appears anywhere else, please? That's a disappointing bug, but anyway. Okay, so our two choices are, I don't like the Wolfram Language solution. I don't like the Wolfram Language data solution. The idea of having a click to copy is nice, and I support that, but I don't think people are going to discover that most of the time.
Well, what if you have a button which says copy values?
That would be fine.
Right, because I mean, we'd need some intelligence from the docs build system, right? Because it needs to know.
Do you want to say copy values, or do you want to write it in a program not with those values? Do you want to have something which is the thing that generates those values every time? In other words, if you write this program and then you come back 5 years later and there's more number systems here, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I think we need some standardized way to say available as.
Mm-hmm.
I really favor putting these things in the data repository. I think it's it's the standard place where we're just having blobs of data available. I mean, alternatively, we have to have something, well, I think the Wolfram Language data thing is a hack, because I think it's going to end up being, because we can't segment the things, for example, for those music things between percussion and other stuff. Now, I thought we were supposed to put it in there, actually. Okay, so listen, I guess this is for Devin now. We need to figure out what are the big chunks of tabular data like this in the documentation, and then we need to talk to Brian about how we can tag it so that it's easy to update. I mean, we could simply put a note in the documentation saying update the data repository if you update this. Somebody is typing an area. Could you mute yourself, please? That's whoever's typing, please mute yourself. Okay, so what do people have to say about this?
How do we handle parameterized settings?
Like what? That's the point. That's why we should put this in the data repository, because we don't have a standard way to do this. In a case like this, we're just putting in blip, here are all of these, right? In the case where one of these was list blah, comma, n, we don't know what to do, and it's going to have to be done on a case-by-case basis.
And what about cases where there's already a built-in discovery mechanism, like packlets, or at least some packlets?
Yeah, well, that's the point. Some. So I would say that it's a discretionary thing. That is, in the documentation, we decide this is a look. If this only had 3 entries, I wouldn't put it in the data repository.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it better to do a click to copy? What do you guys think? I mean, if it's click to copy, you're still not solving the parameterized problem. Again.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it could come in as a placeholder.
Yeah, it could. It could. Okay, this is probably a discussion with Brian, but I really want to see this actually resolved. So, Devin, this is your thing. Go talk to Brian. I think the choices are click to copy with some indicator, a button that says copy list, or data repository entries. You understand?
Got it.
So go and report back to either ILD or this meeting with the result from that.
Okay.
Okay, now here, you are saying from digits will not go backwards from Ethiopic. Is that correct?
Correct. Any
Okay.
string argument other than Roman.
Okay, so I happen to remember that at the summer camp a couple of years ago, somebody wrote some code to do some of these. Maybe this is a good project. I mean, this does seem like a fairly straightforward project, isn't it? Or am I confused?
I mean, the only tricky bit would be hooking it up, right? Without slowing everything else down.
Well, I assume it calls this in the case where somebody's got to put that in, but it's obviously going to call this in the case where it sees a second argument of Ethiopic.
Right. Now,
Francisco, can you comment on this?
Right. So there were a couple of cases where maybe we need a better implementation, like for example for base 64 or base 58, where I think it's worth having a optimized implementation, of course.
I agree.
Because that's something that probably, for example, blockchain people will use, etc. So that needs to be very fast code. In the other cases, like for example, Ethiopic, that could be top level code that, as you said, will be a callback to a function.
Okay. Well, so which of these do we have code for?
So there are like half of them that are trivial because they are like a replacement of digits, but others need have some kind of algorithm.
Okay, fine. So can you specify which ones need an algorithm and let me know that, and we'll see whether people at the summer school or summer camp want to implement some of these. Seems like a good project.
Okay, yes, I can separate that list.
Okay, but I believe that the one for like Korean or something was already done by somebody. So you should look that up.
They started that, but they never finished. As far as I know, I talked with that, with the mentor.
Okay, all right, okay.
It was not finished after.
Oh well. Okay. Well, find out what. Okay, was it that hard?
Not sure if it was hard or it was just a matter of time. Really.
I see. Let's see. Pausing, integer string, output from. Okay. Okay, if you can send that to me, and I'm actually going to be writing up the list of projects in the next day or two. So if you send that to me soon, that will be good. Okay. And the ones where it's just digit replacement, I mean, you could just, get somebody to just write that code. Am I making sense?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Should we go back to this topic here? The this thing. Brett, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So this disaster. So can you explain what's going on here?
So graphics row starting in V12 is attempting to make, as you'll recall, all the frames line up when you have a bunch of plots, right?
I don't want to see text cell here. I just want to say plot label. Well, why is it doing that? I mean, wait a second, what happened here? Oh, there.
So anyway, what?
Okay.
So what graphics row is doing, and graphics grid and graphics column, is it's making sure that all of the things have the same image padding around them, because then the actual content will all line up nicely, right?
As opposed to what?
So if you do the...
Do I have to find a version 11 myself? Can you show me what this looked like before?
Sure.
Can you just send it to me in a...
Just a second.
So you're saying if I say alignment arrow center here,
mm-hmm.
It still didn't work.
Well, that's because you took out the text cell.
Okay.
Eric was using the text cell to have it auto line wrap.
Oh, I see. I
have to say, I'm not entirely thrilled with screenshots in Mojave.
Really, I like the new Shift Command 5.
So it puts the little icon in the bottom right corner after you do that.
Mm-hmm. That's configurable.
And I want to drag it into Mail, and it like loses it.
I see.
Are you sending this to me?
Yes, just did.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the 11.3 behavior. And so what?
So I need to do that with the whole jazz here to see. Okay, so this is the behavior now, which looks pretty terrible. Okay. So what's the issue here? Okay.
So what happens is, like I was starting to say, is that we have things line up by making sure that all the image padding on each side is the same. Right. So if you think back to, like, say a plot where it goes from 0 to 1 and a plot where it goes from 0 to 1,000,000, then things don't line up because 1,000,000 is bigger than 1, and that's affected. That's controlled by the image padding.
Mm-hmm.
And so we figure out how much image padding the 1,000,000 takes, and we apply it to the plot that goes from 0 to 1, and everything lines up. And so that's what's being done here as well. But what happens is the way that I was measuring image padding is including the space used by the plot label. But the plot label actually draws in addition to the image padding. And so when it was setting the image padding according to like a double height, a 2-line plot label, then you're sort of ending up with the plot label, an empty amount of space corresponding to the same height as the plot label. And then the main content was being shrunk down because of the overall size.
But so this is a bug, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I said in the email.
Okay, so you're fixing the bug.
Yes, I was doing that this morning.
Okay, fine. So there's nothing to discuss here. Is there anything to discuss here?
I don't think so.
Fine, let's move on.
Excellent.
Okay, preview of iconize.
Okay, so this is apparently something you claimed you wanted, although
I do.
At the last meeting we decided something else. So
can you remind me what the issue was here? This was a question of being able to mouse over and get a preview of iconize, right?
Oh, mouse over.
I thought.
I think in ILD meeting you mentioned you click on that and it'll give you the preview. You wanted a box-like structure, but it'll just expand and give preview of the iconized items. And on clicking that back, it'll just collapse like how it is right now.
Right. So now I remind you that what we decided at the previous meeting where we were talking about naming iconized objects was that if you clicked on, not on the plus minus, but on the, the name part, then it selects the whole thing and brings up a raft, I guess is the term.
Yep.
Where and I guess one of the options is that you can, edit the name or remove the name of an iconized object.
Okay, so wait a minute. So I remember that also, and that's a good idea. But maybe these aren't inconsistent. Maybe the raft could have two pieces of information in it.
Okay.
What was the preview idea?
So
see, I wasn't in this meeting, so
okay. So what are the notes?
Yeah, that Tushma sent me, and I'm.
Yeah. Okay. So in ILD meeting, what you said was, this was. I mean, this was about, like, we had a code about flip view, of. Let me think what it is. It's about, so if it is 3.14, dot, which was like a flip. I can send you the code which we were discussing.
Yes, please.
Then. Yes, sorry.
Because that was in connection with these numbers that are incomplete, right? Short
Yes,
numbers.
True. And yes, and you thought something like that can happen for iconize as well.
Remind me what we did with numbers. So the idea with numbers was being able to get like something like this and being able to know that was what you see is not what's actually being stored underneath. Right? And so what was the idea there? That you click the number, or that you hover on the number and you get a raft, or what?
There was ellipsis. We discussed about ellipsis. We didn't decide anything. We discussed about having ellipsis, and let me send you the
We definitely do not want an ellipsis by default. We just want the numbers. I mean, that'd be crazy. That would destroy the whole point of this, short number form. What we want is when you mouse over it, it does something. Right?
My recollection was that, for example, for a large matrix iconized, you wanted to click somewhere, see the first elements, and then you click again, and it goes back to this.
Stephen, you really need to get out of the habit of discussing typesetting user interface things in ILD. It's the wrong set of people. Should just be discussing that here or in user assistance where.
Well, sorry. I mean, that's why we have notes and things.
Let me put this.
I'm not seeing anything here yet.
I'm just suggesting.
I sent you on chat.
I'm just suggesting this will be more efficient for you if you send these things to the right places to begin with.
Well, yes, but these things come up in connection with something else, and that's why. Okay, what does this do? Around eyes.
Oh.
What is this doing?
So that was a code. I'm sending you example as well. So do around eyes on FF, which I just sent you. So when you saw the example, you mentioned that this could also go. Yes. And then on clicking that ellipsis, it expands like that. And you were saying that something like this, on clicking the ellipsis there in iconize, it should give preview in that box itself, not uniconize it.
This does seem to me to make quite a bit of sense. Are you understanding it, I?
That's actually, well, I guess you're starting with imprecise numbers to begin with.
Forget about the numbers case. We're not talking about the numbers case here. We're talking about the iconize case. And the question is whether this, if you click here, you click on the initial thing here, should you get something which sort of blows it out into something slightly bigger?
Well, but this is not blowing it out into something slightly bigger, right?
What isn't?
Would this around eyes thing, right? That's showing you the complete thing.
Well, in that particular case, but that's that wasn't what I had in mind for iconize.
I see. Right, but if it does that, then then you've just I don't think really that it's that useful, and B, I think that that's fundamentally incompatible with naming, the naming idiom, which I think is more important. So maybe it gives you a raft, which allows you to do that.
Sorry. I spaced out for a second. Excuse me. I got distracted by something. Could you come say that again?
Right. So I think that, using up the click on the main thing action to, blow it up is the wrong thing.
Okay. What do you think it should do?
Well, I think it should, right. So our idea from last time was that it should, select it and give you a raft.
Why do you need most rafts come up on hover, not on selection? Rafts typically come up on hover.
Selection is useful, though. I mean, we're not doing anything else when you click on it. And
I know. We're suggesting that you do this when you click on it. I'm suggesting that you do.
Yeah. No. Because now right now, Iconize steals away the mouse click to do nothing instead of selection, and now you're proposing you steal away the mouse click to do something entirely different instead of selection. I still like to select stuff.
Well, okay, but it's not selecting right now. Look, within the icon.
But the plan was to have it do that.
Do what? What kind of selection?
It would, clicking anywhere on Iconize that's not an active control would simply select the entire Iconize blob. At which point you could conveniently do a copy, for example. I mean, right now, if you want to copy an Iconize blob, you have to very carefully, drag from the left side to the right side, or use cursor,
Well, if you want to copy anything like this, I have to drag from the left side to the right side.
No, you don't. Actually, you can double click and it gets much easier, or triple click and it gets
much easier. So I see. So in this case, what if you double click here?
Well, if single click doesn't select, why should double click select?
Fair enough. Well, look, I think that being able to see a preview of what's inside the Iconize will be really, really useful. I mean, this preview is kind of lame.
Well, we can. I think it would be more useful than to add it to that. I mean,
but I think it's a natural thing for people to do, to click it, see a preview, click it again, get rid of the preview.
I think that's what the plus sign is for.
Yeah.
Fair point. I just think it's more natural. I mean, I'm not that wild about the plus sign, and I would be perfectly happy to not have a plus sign, to have it be that to change the UX slightly, and to have two things happen. One, you click on the thing to get it to puff out, and two, you get a raft that allows you other actions.
But I'm with John. I'm constantly copy pasting things from all sorts of cells in the front end, and I don't want selection to be harder.
Yeah, I mean, I really think this puffing out is less important than,
What about if the puff out information is available in the raft? What about if on hover it shows the summary and then gives you a rename as a second item in the raft?
Possibly.
So sorry, my iPad that I was using Zoom on overheated, and I had to move to another device.
So what I said was, on hover, give a raft, the top row of which is the puff out, and the second row of which is the rename possibility.
So are these rafts available anywhere yet? I mean, what?
It's something that we're definitely planning, but the basic functionality, which requires attached cells that attach to selections, is not yet done.
Okay.
So it's not yet user accessible, is what you're saying.
No, not done. We have attached cells, but we can't attach them to arbitrary selections yet, which is what we really want to do here. We can attach them to a box. So if your selection corresponds to a box, then yes, but and it does for this particular case, but how we were wanting to implement is to be able to attach to arbitrary selections.
Right. So, okay. So there isn't an example of one of these refs even in the prototype build that we could look at.
Okay. There is an example. You're saying there isn't, or there is?
Well, that was a question of whether there is or is not. And
no.
Okay. Because I guess in part it's hard to.
I mean, the closest analogous behavior would be the kinds of things that spring up when you select, for example, an image or an image 3D or graph, or actually I can't remember if we do it for graphs or not, but along those lines.
That one there.
But smaller in this particular case.
So you're proposing that on selection, you bring up a raft of some kind, not on hover.
Right. And that you would routinely see selection rafts. I mean, for lots of selections, but depending on the actual selection, the contents of the raft may be different.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm not wild about this plus sign. And these actions, we need the uniconized action. It's useful to see some of these things here, particularly things like the byte count. But those are things which I would be happy to, have a little information button to get to that comes up in a raft. But I don't understand why you don't want a raft on hover.
Well, I mean, for one thing, I think we have too many rafts on hover. It's
I turn off rafts on hover because they're always getting in my way.
I mean, we already have cases where we're fielding accidental clicks.
Right, okay.
And the more rafts, the more accidents they're going to be. It's not a design I've ever been strongly in favor of.
Okay. So, I mean, are you suggesting that we might have a selection-based raft here?
I'm suggesting that we would probably have a selection-based raft for most selections. Only the content of the raft would differ depending on the content of the selection.
So for example, that'd be nice. I mean, so for example, for that,
but also the nice thing about about that is we can control a little bit more, the kind of mouse over sort of thing, and we can even dim the raft down when you move away from the selection so that it's not obscuring the content behind it.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I agree. I think being able to get to information, get to documentation from the thing based on selection would be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so look, I think we need to figure out what would be the shallow representation of an iconized thing, and then I kind of agree with this idea of a click-based raft.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe I will want to push for some change in that plus sign behavior.
Yeah, I don't know what the shallow representation would be either. Are we just punting that question for the time being, or?
Well, I think somebody should try and figure it out. I mean, it's going to be some short or shallow type thing.
I mean, big question for me is it pre-computed or computed on demand?
Well, certainly right now it's not pre-computed. I mean, we'd need to.
Yeah.
I would think we should pre-compute it.
Right, which would be creating yet another backward incompatible iconize, which, for something that's allegedly.
Wait. Why is it backward incompatible? It's just putting something else in the association for the iconized object, which will presumably be ignored in earlier versions.
It's possible we might be able to do it without a backward compatibility. I'd have to look at the boxes for iconize more closely. Ethan's right, there's a risk, but it's not a guarantee. It depends on the boxes.
Hey, why doesn't that work? I'm right-clicking here and I'm saying, it's selection. I see.
Oh, yes, that is something that I've discovered before, and
I thought we reported it as a bug, but
I think this is a reported bug.
It is certainly a reported bug because I'm pretty sure I reported it.
Okay.
Okay, fine. All right. Question from our live stream here. There's a suggestion about click and hold, but we can't do click and hold. That's a mobile metaphor. Ian asks, would it be possible to password protect iconized content? Interesting. We've not thought about that. I mean, let me see what would it do if you did Control-Shift-E?
Right. I mean, what you'd need to do, what we would need to do is extend method to allow you to specify some sort of arbitrary deserialization function so that you put in an encoded password protected object.
Well, you just put in an encrypted thing.
Sure.
Now, I mean, once one person has decrypted it, then, yeah, I mean, so the scenario would be you give your notebook to people. Let's see. The problem is I don't see how this could work. I mean, if by password protected you mean that you can't get to the content, you can only use the value of the content. The problem is it's way too easy to intercept that.
Right.
I mean, to see the content in plain text in the notebook, yes, one can protect against that. But as soon as I say, thing equals this,
right,
I'm getting the content.
Right. I think there's no added value beyond using, encrypt of expression and then just sending the encrypted object in a notebook, and then the recipient has to,
Yeah, I think that the thing that is of interest is to be able to have something where this is a different kind of thing that's being asked for. It's a thing whose value, gosh, that's a very bizarre concept. It's a thing whose value.
Right, because, well, I mean, if the value is accessible, then you can just put it in a cell by itself and evaluate it, and voila.
Right, so Bob from our live stream is asking, couldn't you hide or delete all files inside an icon?
Yeah, so the front end security system, such as it is going to kick into place for anything that it can't positively identify as being safe code, which includes, for example, unencrypting or to expression or something like that.
So that still doesn't solve the problem of having something behind the icon that you could use in a program but never get the unencrypted version of that stuff.
Right.
That's really hard.
What I'm saying is, if the front end can't read the program in plain text, it's going to advise you it's a security problem.
No, I understand. But I think this problem of, this is the world of like fully homomorphic encryption, so to speak. Can you do operations on something which is encrypted? Because as soon as the thing ever gets decrypted, you can go in and somehow trace what's going on in the code, and you don't need to disassemble or anything. You just need, I don't think that's workable. I'd love to make something that is workable. Now, in terms of the rename, offering rename in the right-click icon, is that a good idea? I think it's a decent idea. I don't think that the right-click menu is overly full right now. I don't see why we shouldn't allow a rename iconized thing in the right-click menu on iconize.
I agree.
Okay, so that's that's another way to do the rename. Okay.
So I will warn you, this is something we just threw in because other agenda items had to be removed because somebody's on PTO.
You mentioned you needed Jeremy for this meeting, and Jeremy had to leave. Or
Okay,
will-
but I think if the general point is to parameterize indentation in exported stuff, yes, we obviously need a way to do that. But this isn't it.
Okay.
I mean, it'll be some named option. I would assume. I just don't know how to parameterize indentation. I mean, this is like code beautification styles. I mean, don't we want to say an option that's called something like indentation theme, an analogy to plot theme, and then you can give all kinds of names for this.
Like I said, this is something I threw together, so this is
Okay.
really.
But anyway, that's my suggestion: is some kind of indentation theme. Is that obviously silly?
I'm not sure, but scroll down a bit. In the email, he also mentions that he basically wants to specify what the string is himself. Yeah.
It's not useful.
So, by the way, just to be clear, it's not just the indentation you're losing comments too. This is thematically similar to convert to standard form.
Sorry, what are you talking about? I mean, you're talking about the round trip around through JSON or something?
No, I'm talking about the fact that what it's doing is taking boxes and converting them to an expression and throwing the expression in iconize.
Wait. We're not talking about iconize anymore. This has nothing to do with iconize.
Yeah.
It's a completely different topic, John. Although that's a good point.
Sorry, I didn't catch. I thought you were talking about.
We're talking about indentation.
Preview of iconize. I didn't.
No.
Okay.
You completely lost it here. We're talking about indentation options for export functions.
No, because no, that's what it was. Because I misidentified this because there was a discussion. I guess this wasn't it about preserving indentation for iconize. That's what it was.
But that is a good point. Yeah.
But that's not what this topic is. Okay.
Okay, but hold on. Let's talk about that.
Well, that's completely impossible.
Okay.
Right? Because what does it do? It creates an expression and it sticks that expression inside of the icon. Expressions don't have indentation. They're just expressions.
It's unfortunate because it would be quite nice. Because it would be a way of essentially doing code folding. And as it is, you can't code fold and preserve the formatting of your code. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we'd have to support two kinds of iconize because we can't do that generally with iconize. It would be a terrible hit to the efficiency of being able to iconize large things that were never represented in a notebook in the first place.
I see what you're saying.
But I suppose one could say that if it was in a notebook in the first place, then maybe you're not losing too much because the boxes were there at one point in time, and you could find a different representation which isn't lossy on the boxes. Maybe.
I think that should be looked at because I think it's an interesting idea. That if the thing has non-default formatting and you ask to iconize, I mean, you could even ask if it has non-default formatting, you could even ask at the time you iconize, do you want to preserve formatting?
Oh, I hate. You just want to do something. You don't want to make choices.
Yeah, right.
Because developers are too lazy to make the choices.
Fair enough. I agree. I've made similar points myself. But the suggestion would be if it's small and it was formatted in the notebook and you're iconizing by taking something explicitly displayed in the notebook and saying iconize it, that it preserves the boxes in the iconized structure.
So, I mean, I'd want to talk with Lou about this, but it seems conceptually possible.
Okay, talk to Lou. Let's hear about that.
Itai, would you disagree with that?
I suppose it's not the halting problem, so I suppose it is possible.
Well, I'm only talking about interactive iconize.
Right. I understand. Right. I understand that. I'm not sure it could be done in any sort of
But why doesn't John talk to Lou about that and see whether he can come up with a way that could be done?
Okay.
Let's talk about it again. But this indentation stuff, I kind of think indentation theme is a better idea than indentation string. But I don't know whether the people who are dealing with this probably aren't here.
Well, I mean, Sean's here and I'm here.
Tony, though, seems to be an originator. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, like I said, this is something that was to replace something that I was actually ready to discuss. So
I do have something that I would like to discuss, if possible.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I share?
Go ahead. Although we're a bit over time, but go ahead, please.
So Shadi and I were looking at attachments in EML Inbox again. And so the middle here is the EML new, which is what we decided on after last LCC. And on the right is basically my proposal. I know that I want this stuff, I'm just not sure that it's named properly. So we created attachment list, which used to be attachments. And well, we dropped the left-hand side of the rule, which was the file name, and now it's just a list of expressions.
Okay.
Like it says. So the expressions is useful, but sometimes you want the expression and the file name, for example. So we have this attachment data thing that has the raw content, but it's the raw encoded content. And it's base 64 and not as useful as the raw decoded content as a byte string.
So the natural name would be attachment rules. That would be our natural. That would be our natural name for the thing that is actually, well, can there be multiple attachments with the same name?
Yes.
So then that's the only choice. I mean, it has to be a list with the left-hand side of the rule being the name and the right-hand side being the value.
So attachment rules has, well, not so much that as much as all of these properties would be useful in an association. So list of associations.
So wait a minute. You yourself had added attachment rules, right? That wasn't there before. Is that correct?
Yes, just now. This is what I want to propose. So right now we have attachment data with just the raw content and the raw encoded content. I want three things. I want still the raw data. So that's what was attachment data. I want something that gives me the byte string so I can call import string on it however I please. And I want something that gives me the actual imported content by default.
Okay, hold on.
So these are three associations which only differ in one field?
Yes. How we present the content. And this is for efficiency, basically. If we gave you all these things in one thing, then there's no point in separating them. If you really just wanted the byte string, it'd be inefficient to have already imported everything. Which is why we dropped attachment associations. Attachment associations used to be this raw encoded content as well as the imported content, but we've never exposed this raw byte string, which is the most useful thing. The decoded byte string.
Why is it a byte string and not a byte array?
You mean byte array here, don't you? It should be a byte array.
It probably should be a byte array, but import byte array is basically,
I don't care how it's implemented. What matters is how it's designed, and it should be.
So
byte
as a byte array.
Byte array with a space in the middle of it.
Gotcha. Okay, so we need to have.
Wait. So what you want to do is it? You're saying that in each case you also want the name, the MIME type, etc. That you want all those things in all these cases. Is that right?
Yes, except for content transfer encoding, which is only useful if it's actually still encoded.
But so if you decoded it, you still want to know the MIME type. Yeah, you need the MIME type.
Yes.
Yeah, you need all that stuff.
Now we have a good conversion from MIME type to format too. So hypothetically, I could also add a field that interprets the MIME type as its Wolfram language format.
Okay. So each one of these
it depends if you want what was in the email exactly. The raw contents that you can do whatever you want with flexibility and efficiency, or just let it get imported as content.
I understand, but I don't think these names are great for distinguishing those cases.
I agree. The names we need to work on. There's also one other difference here. In attachment data previously, it was documented that byte count was the number of bytes in the raw encoded content. That's completely useless. That's not going to be the size of the file when you actually download your attachment. So for byte count in this raw data one, sure, it should be the encoded content, maybe, or maybe it should just always be the decoded. And we definitely
you don't want to do the decoded because you don't even have the decoded content. In the raw data case, you're not decoding anything. You're leaving it in the encoded form.
Fine. So byte count makes sense to be the encoded content. But then for these cases, all three of them, it makes sense for the byte count to be the decoded byte count.
I agree. But wait a minute, all three or all two of them?
All two.
Three. Attachment summaries is also highlighted here.
Oh.
Okay, so that's yet a fourth case of how attachments... I mean, really, this is similar to... It feels a bit similar to something where you would just give a list of elements, where you have another sublist and you're saying attachment elements.
That is exactly what this is getting at. And I have kind of two levels where this would happen. So for these attachment associations, if you're just looking for the names and contents, that would be a sub-element. And that's on the plan to implement. We could do the same thing for something like full message elements to query specific keys efficiently, because right now, if you ask for multiple elements, it's this transpose thing that's not useful, not the associations that we want.
Hold on. What? What do you mean? The associations for... Oh, you're saying in an mbox.
Right.
The mbox.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand this. And you're saying that... I'm not wild about this full message elements followed by a subcase there.
And I suppose this would actually be this. But
I don't understand that.
Okay, so full message elements, let's just import this, is an association for each email, right? And we want this association to only contain some specific subset of keys because this contains a lot of keys.
I see. Well, I don't understand why that isn't just you importing those elements, like from and subject.
Because if we just import multiple elements, it comes back as this transposed list of lists, which isn't useful. Maybe
so it's a list of... No, wait a second.
It's the from and the subject for each email.
Right. This only has one email in it.
And what do you want it to be? You want it to be all the froms and then all the subjects? I don't think so.
I want each email group together with its from and subject in one association. Maybe this is a better example. Because right now, this first list...
like the wrong behavior for an mbox. I mean, for a single email, sure, but for an mbox, I don't understand why it isn't.
Because if you asked for from... right, it would give you the list of froms, right? If you ask for just one element.
Well, but that's okay. So hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on. This is different. An EML for a single email is different from what it should do for an mbox, isn't it?
Only in that we won't select by email here. So if this were for EML, we would drop this. But because
I understand that, but I'm saying that the behavior, this whole transposing behavior, you want something different, because if you just want for a single email, you just say from, subject. You just want a list of the from and the subject. No double list, no anything. And that's what we have to do.
That doesn't make sense with the syntax of import. Because then this thing should be a sub-elem if this is an elem, not a list of elems. And if you want a list of elems that is documented...
So the double list. Okay, there's a double.
That's why there's a double list.
All right. Okay. Fine. Okay. So there's a double list there, but in the case of an mbox, okay. So things like mail responder function, they just use the individual elements here, from and subject and so on.
Do you mean mail receiver function? Or?
Mail receiver function. Yes.
Right, but they are not also constrained to the syntax for import that's existed forever.
I understand, but I'm saying that for an mbox, I would have thought that you're saying you want... I see, those are multiple elements.
And multiple elements are always returned as the list of this element and then the list of...
I get it.
But if we drill down into with sub-elements, we can pick specific keys. And that's exactly what a sub-element is for. We have an association with a bunch of things, and then the sub-element would be the subset of keys from that association.
Yeah.
So this applies both to picking elements that are at the element level for the EML or MBox, and then for attachments, we do the same thing. We can drill into those keys for the associations. And, after going through many examples, this is the piece that has always been missing to make this useful without having to do a bunch of transposes or something.
Sorry. By the way, I'm looking at your toolbar again and thinking how much we need that toolbar to be in the function repository. But anyway, who made that toolbar?
That's Brett's toolbar, actually.
Yes.
Julia's made a bunch of changes to it. I am very fond of this bar.
Looks very nice, and it seems like it's something that should be in. Is there a reason it could not be in the function repository?
It would involve learning how to put something in the function repository?
Well, no. I mean, so I'm not sure that it makes sense in the function repository because it's not really a function. I mean, it's...
Well, the function is a bar that, enables or, I guess, should enable and disable it. Oh, it's on
No. It's just a thing that will create a notebook with that bar in it. That's what the function would be. By the way, that toolbar should also be looked at when we're building, we're supposed to be building a default toolbar for notebooks.
Yes, we are.
And that toolbar
but it's a very different kind of focus thing.
I understand that, but it has some interesting things in it. Anyway.
So I'm glad it seems like we're convinced with sub-elements. The only thing left that I need to figure out then is the names for these three things.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Maybe Sean and I should have a separate meeting to sort through this. And
fine. Sounds good to me. Yes. I mean, yeah, and you say you've used all three of these cases, Sean.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not really so much the raw case, which is the one we already had, but these two cases are incredible.
Yeah, they seem very useful.
I don't care if we drop the raw one, but
by the way, I think no. Wait a second. One comment that I have is the key name should not always be content. It should be raw content. It should be decoded content. See what I'm saying? And it should be whatever imported, decoded content. Then the first one will be raw content. I don't know whether. Yeah, I don't know whether we want to say imported content. Then it may not be consistent with something else.
How about just content?
I would think just content there.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's see. Why not do the following? Okay. The first one is attachment raw data. The second one is attachment decoded data. And the third one is just attachment data.
This is actually literally what I landed on the first time.
Okay. Is there a problem with it?
No. I guess the problem was I wasn't sure if you would like it.
Oh, well, but you got it the first time. So this is a very good sign. I mean, does anybody object to this? This seems pretty good.
I like it.
I'd want to review it in a more fashion.
Fine. I will look at it some more, but provisionally, let's assume this is what we're going to go with.
Great. I mean, I can always rename things.
Okay, good stuff. All right. Talk to you all soon. Thank you all, and thank you.